Megan, you have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, so I'm going to call to order the special meeting number 331, the fiscal year 22 budget retreat of the Wachusett Regional School District School Committee, held tonight, Monday, February 8th, 2021 at 5:32 p.m. I just wanted to begin before the administration starts their presentation by welcoming everyone tonight and welcoming members of the public that may be watching this process for the first time. So in that regard, to let you know how this is going to go, typically the administration presents a slideshow of some budget priorities for the coming fiscal year during our budget retreat. After that time, members then have opportunities to ask questions, ask clarifying points, but also very importantly, identify what their own budget priorities are for fiscal year 22. This is an essential part of our process. As many of you know, and I remind many people, the school committee has 3 key tasks, one of which is to set policy for the district, another of which is to evaluate the superintendent, and finally, and sometimes most importantly, it is to set the budget. So at the end of the day, it's the school committee that votes on and sets the budget, while the administration may give us parameters and guidelines. At the end of the day, we are the ones that are fiscally responsible for the district. So if any members, especially our newest members, have questions during this evening's presentation, Kate, if you have questions during the presentation tonight, please stop me and ask those questions. I'd rather take the time to answer them and make sure we all have clarity rather than rush through the process. Finally, this evening, I do want to let people know that this is not our budget. Whatever we set tonight or speak about tonight, that is giving the administration some priorities to move forward to finalize FY22. We will then vote on it. And then that budget gets presented to the towns, and you, the townspeople, get the final say. I hope that helps everyone a little bit this evening, set the stage. And without further ado, Dr. McCall. Daryl, you're on mute still. I think we're all gonna be happy never to have someone say, you're on mute still one day.
I was getting my other stuff ready for executive session, so I shut everything down. So thank you, Chair Weeks, and thank you to everyone for coming here early this evening. Again, this is our first virtual budget retreat, so this will be an interesting endeavor. I'm looking forward to getting feedback from all of you around kind of where we're at, what we're doing. As Chair Weeks mentioned, this is kind of where we're at administratively. What we're presenting to you today is really information pertaining to salaries, some of our projections around health insurance and other things, really to give us a dollar amount that we can start looking at. I can tell you our revenues, we're still waiting on some of the revenue numbers, and Director Dede will speak to that later on this evening. But when we're speaking about the budget just in general, again, the feedback is really what's critical for us as we move forward. As Chair Weeks also mentioned, this is not the budget that we bring forward. You will vote on a budget down the road, and then that will be brought forth to the towns, and that's what will be presented. So this evening is just an overview of some of the different items that we focused on administratively, and some of the updates associated with the numbers that have been presented by the state. So I have a presentation I'll be sharing with you. Members of the executive staff will be jumping in at different times to discuss. Again, I'll be sharing my screen, so I'll be just looking at this. So Bob or Dan or Jeff or Brendan, please jump in because I can't see your faces. I'll just be doing the screen. So I'm going to present my presentation. And if someone can just tell me if we're good to go.
You're good, Daryl. And maybe you could zoom in just a little bit.
Zoom in a little bit, Bob?
Yep.
Sure. See if I can make that a little bigger.
Or just start.
So welcome to the FY22 Budget Retreat. Again, this is our, sorry, now it's going a little slower, but this is our mission statement. Again, we've had some conversations about what we're going to be doing for our strategic plan moving forward. I have been in contact with Mars. Mars was the group that worked with the district 5 years ago now on the development of the current strategic plan. And I'm actually speaking with Mac Reed tomorrow, where we're going to talk about next steps and possibilities moving forward. So, you know, our mission statement is one that I feel is powerful. You know, WRSD seeks to ensure meaningful student growth and promote social, emotional well-being in a safe and nurturing environment. We will integrate the talent, experience, and knowledge of all of our members of our community to develop lifelong learners equipped to think critically in an ever-changing global society. So our strategic plan, as all of you know, is broken down into our 5 domains. So we have leadership, governance, and communication, aligned curriculum, effective instruction, professional development and structures for collaboration, and then finally, student social, emotional, and health needs. All of those domains have been the areas in which we've been using, focusing on as we've developed budgets over the past several years. And it's really helped us kind of define what our needs are as a school district each and every year. Tonight's agenda includes conversations around enrollment, all of the FY22 items, including projections around salaries and benefits, instruction and operations, fixed costs, total budget, revenues, and a budget calendar. So enrollment. As all of you know, our enrollment has dropped this year by several hundred students, and this has happened across the Commonwealth, from Boston to Williamstown. So we're not alone in this kind of predicament, but at the same time, we are hopeful that these numbers will increase this coming year. So we went from 710 down to 6,586 between FY20 and FY21. There's a breakdown by school of enrollment, and as you will note, most of the schools did see a drop. The majority of the schools did. I believe Mayo and Naquag had very similar numbers, as did Paxton Center. There weren't as many students who actually left. But then we had some places such as Mount View and let's say Dawson, where we saw some lower numbers this coming year, or for FY21, than we did in FY20. Enrollment by town. You'll note, again, Holden had a steady increase up until this year, where there's a decline. Paxton declined a small amount, Princeton a small amount, Rutland a little bit more, and Sterling a little bit more. So all told, all the towns actually had decreased enrollment. So when you look at the total enrollment across the board from community to community, Holden dropped about 5.5% from FY21 to FY22. Paxton about 3.9%. Princeton dropped 6.8%. Rutland 5.3%, and Sterling almost 10%. And again, those numbers are based upon our October 1 counts from FY21 to FY22. And the overall amount is 417 students. High school enrollment share is important, and this is because the way in which we break down some of our assessments. But if you'll note that Holden actually has an increase in terms of the overall percentage of high school students, and that is because their count actually went up, while Paxton, Princeton, Rutland, and Sterling all dropped, with Sterling dropping about 35 students. So between 21 and 22, the high school dropped about 27 students, about 1.3%. So this is the FY22 administrative budget, and it should really say draft budget. All of this should say draft. This is not set in stone, but these are the numbers that we've been pulling together over the past several weeks, based upon the governor's numbers, based upon information that we've been able to glean from our own buildings and our own needs associated with our textbook plan, our staffing plan, our technology plan. So under administrative budget priorities, and again, Bob, you'll jump in at different places because you have the notes associated with this. But domain one, that's continued budget transparency via a line item budget. Director Dede has already started pulling this together. And, again, this is a lengthy process, but I think it's one that helps everyone kind of see where all the money is actually being spent. And that's everyone within the school and also our community members. Domain two, we have our literacy program adoption, grades 3 and 4, and also our math and science textbook renewals. Bob, did you want to hit those up a little bit?
Yeah, this year we put a hold on a lot of what we were hoping to do this year. This year is year three of the textbook plan, and next year would be year 4. So what we're trying to do is to combine those 2 years together to see what we can meaningfully get done between the end of this year and any residual funds and next year as well, so that we're not as far behind as what we are, because as this indicates, because we do have a 9-year textbook adoption plan. So to add another year out there just seemed off-putting to us. So in it, one of the highest priority things we're doing as a district is this new early literacy program. And right now we're on hold for grade 3. We started to do some work the previous year, and then this year we really haven't moved forward with it because we've been using the textbook funds for a lot of other things, such as purchasing some applications, online applications, PPE, etc. So what we're hoping to do is next year is to sort of move ahead with the literacy adoption in grades 3 and grade 4. That means moving some other things out of there that aren't on this list. But some of the things that are absolutely essential is our math textbook adoption. Our licenses are running out. We need to move forward with that, as well as our science textbook. We've put this on hold for a whole year already. So next year it's really essential that we start to address science. And that goes into domain 3 as well, where we're looking at technology. We were able to buy a lot of the hardware this year. We still have some elementary carts that might need addressing, but the biggest thing there is to continue to support the technology. So as we have older Chromebooks that are aging out, that we renew those. A lot of it is in leases now, so we're able to just move those chunks of money forward. And coupled with that is the training of staff. That's really important in there. The textbook plan might itself morph to include some of the broader definitions of what's in a textbook, and it very well could be that we're talking about applications rather than some big thick thing that a kid would hold in their hands. It might be a collection of apps that are on a Chromebook that the student is able to take home, and that's how they do science or history or math or English or music or art or any of those things. So that's what we're kind of breaking out in here. Under domain 4, what we're looking to do, this is where we do a lot of training, is under domain 4. We're looking to continue to support our staff in terms of how do kids use technology to engage themselves in their learning, but also to show their learning as well. And that on top of that, it also includes social emotional training on staff to how do you address student anxiety? How do you address anxiety within yourself as an educator, those types of things? And how do we better measure and support student learning through a variety of data sources that are in there? And lastly, under domain 5, Daryl, do you want to do domain 5?
Sure, yeah, thank you, Bob. And going through those. So, and again, domain 5 is really continuing the support with Interface, the referral service that we have with William James College. That has been utilized by members of our own community, as well as members of the 5 towns. So that's what's such a great part of the Interface program, is that it really puts people in contact with support services that they need in a much quicker manner than they typically would have to go through if they were working through their own medical provider. And also, our Panorama Education Success and SEL survey tools will continue to be utilized. And, especially as we work with students moving forward. Again, this has been an area that Director Keenan has focused on. This year, Director Keenan has had to split much of his time between a lot of the SEL issues, but also a lot of the COVID issues. And he's done a great job kind of really having the dual personalities associated with working through both of those. So the budget realities, again, because of the uncertainty associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, this budget is really created for in-person learning. So I know there had been a member had sent an email out this weekend just concerning, hey, we should really have a plan in place around, starting back, even September, starting back in person, just like we would have in the past. So we're trying to put together a budget that takes that into consideration. But at the same time, as Bob mentioned, we still have the capacity to deal with hybrid and remote issues, especially around technology. So building up the training, building up the support services for students and staff around this, which is just really, really vital at this time. So in all of this, these funds still include items for PPE. We'll still probably need PPE moving forward until there is a vaccination for students. We're still going to be in a situation where that's going to be something that's necessary. We will continue to need technology to support in-person and remote learning, across the board. We will continue to need applications that work, with our Chromebooks and, are able to be easily kind of rendered through Google Classroom. The other part that we have added this year, we've added building substitutes. We knew building substitutes were going to be an issue. Just substitutes in general are an issue throughout the Commonwealth and the country. And we've been fortunate in the sense that, our HR department and our principals have really been moving quite quickly to bring building substitutes in who are permanently in the building. And that has been just, really a saving grace for us, in terms of being able to put people into spaces where kids are and where teachers might not be able to be because they're quarantined or whatever it might be. And then finally, a continued training for our staff. We want to make sure that we're continuing to train our staff, especially around the technology and technology integration that is just so vital for what we're doing on a daily basis with students. So this is a budget breakdown by appropriation. And again, I'm just putting this out there as a quick overview in terms of all the different appropriations, and we'll talk about all of these moving forward. So under FY22 salaries and benefits, and again, what I'll do is, we'll go through this a little bit, but we have our contractual obligations and what we've done through our negotiations as well. So we have possible new positions for FY21. We had new hires this year. So we have special education. We have the nurse that we are still in the process, like we've posted for that position and we've not been able to hire someone yet. Elementary guidance, those positions have been posted and we hope to have those people on board soon. We put in 2 tech integration specialists. We had one at the high school already, and it was just such a vital need for our elementary and middle school teachers. So those positions have been added. As I mentioned earlier, building subs, that was something that we did not have in the budget. We did have the assistant principal at Naquag. For safety purposes, we put that person right back in as soon as we were sure we had the funds to do so. And then custodial, providing enough support so that we could get the buildings clean on a regular basis. Out of the positions that we have not put the 2 Mountain View teachers in that had been in the budget last year. Again, we're looking at those numbers moving forward to see how that might play out. In terms of our tiered reductions, we still have not replaced the curriculum supervisor position. There were some classroom teacher positions that have not been replaced, as well as a few clerical positions. And then finally, one of the things that we will be looking at will be updating our staffing plan because of just kind of the disarray that everything, in terms of how everything occurred with COVID this past year. But if we were to look at our FY22 staffing plan, in there right now, we had a director of vocational education at the high school and, at our middle schools, another ESL teacher, an assistant business director, more classroom teachers to reduce class sizes. And again, those were items that were in the most recent staffing plan that we're going to have to update and review. So again, when we look at this, and Dan, you can talk a little bit about the funds if you like.
Sure thing, Daryl. So the almost $1.5 million increase. Again, there are some positions that we need to put in there. We are having some discussions also with principals and regarding FY22 and perhaps trading, for lack of a better term, some of their existing positions for positions that they need given the challenges that they're about. I'm just going to speak, I guess, selfishly just for a second. The assistant business director, where we're looking to do some reclassification of positions within the business office, and so the net increase is very, very nominal, very nominal. We have realized some savings in other areas of the budget. The building subs, again, we built them up given some of the challenges that the principals have been about looking to bring on or keep potentially 20 building subs at approximately $150 per day there. So this here is still somewhat of a fluid number, and this number also does reflect various contractual obligations for a number of groups come FY22.
Great. Under benefits and insurance, we have two different items. So our health insurance estimate is currently around 14%. We do have a meeting with our vendor, I believe, this week. So we'll have a finalized number associated with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Again, this does go back to the PEC, and they could have the opportunity to see whether or not there are any other companies out there who would want Wachusett's business. Again, this would be a pretty sizable increase for us. And then with the county retirement assessment, this is a 15% increase. And Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a real number now, correct?
It is, Daryl. So just a noteworthy point. These two items here within benefits and insurance, these are the big drivers, if you will. There are some other figures which is the reason for the percentage increase of 15.51%. Health insurance, again, that's the number that we've been told to use. Since last Monday's Business and Finance Subcommittee meeting, we do have a definitive number in Worcester County Retirement. We had built in 14%. It's now 15%. And what does that translate into dollars and cents? Approximately almost a 21,000. Sorry about that. My screen just went blank. Almost a $21,000 increase over the number that I presented to finance last week. Also, which is not here, but other insurances, our workers' comp. Again, I had a meeting last week with our rep, and the placeholder there is again 14%, and we're hoping that we can reduce that figure in the next couple of weeks. But at a minimum, it's going to be a couple of weeks before we have that definitive number.
Great, thank you, Dan. So total salaries and benefits, between our salaries and stipends and our benefits and insurance, we're now projecting about a 4.86% increase, which again is almost a $4 million increase. So instruction and operations. Again, this is an area that we continue to build up, and it's especially around technology. So under tech, we're continuing to support a one-to-one program for students in grades 6 through 12. We're also looking to add more technology to our grades 1 through 5 in terms of Chrome carts throughout all of the schools. We want to continue to add newly added software and apps for all the Chromebooks, because again, what we're finding is that the more tools that teachers have at their disposal, really the more flexibility they have in terms of meeting the needs of a diverse group of learners. And then bandwidth, we're really looking to continue to increase our bandwidth. We did see it throttled in a couple of buildings. We do have, I believe, Naquag and Central Tree. We've been working with Spectrum for the past several weeks, waiting for them to, actually increase the amount. We were ready to go a few weeks ago. So the staff at Naquag and Central Tree have been very patient. We appreciate that. And we're hoping that gets dealt with pretty quickly. And as Bob mentioned, years 3 and 4 of the textbook plan and the early literacy program, we're hoping to put as much in there as possible and merge that in. So that's where we end up getting, an increase of about 2.4%. Under operations and maintenance, again, this is a number that we continue to increase, and primarily, we have our increase associated with electricity, water, and sewer, just a 5% projection. We have our maintenance agreements with all 5 towns that we pay on an annual basis, and we also have our minor and major repairs that we do every single year. This year, we did spend, quite a bit of money on our HVAC systems throughout all of our schools. This was something that had not been planned on, and it was something that we've had to, again, support in order to ensure that we can have our students and staff in our buildings safely in terms of the air exchange rate and so forth. Dan, did you want to add anything to this?
Sure thing. So within this appropriation, a couple things. Number one, we did realize a savings in our oil for next year, about 124,000 and change. There are still some other contracts, though, relative to natural gas that are still up in the air. Also relative to our provider for electricity, we're still negotiating that, and some of the numbers are fairly high. But within this appropriation, we did use a placeholder, approximately $200,000 for PPE, and going forward. And again, that's as I often say at finance, that's a fluid number, and most likely have to amend that figure as well. And it depends upon the flexibility with our federal grants, and also, as I presented the finance too, it depends upon too, we have the flexibility to get reimbursed through FEMA moving forward. As finance knows, we put an application in last September, and here we are almost the middle of February, and still nothing, although the rules have changed in our favor. So there's a lot going on there, and hopefully we can get some relief or support with some of the federal grants and FEMA to offset some of our costs.
Dan, what was the estimated amount from FEMA that we were projecting to receive?
Sure thing. So we submitted an application back on September 1st of approximately 129,000 and change, and we were looking then at a reimbursement of about $96,000, 75 cents on the dollar. With the new administration, they have loosened up the restrictions, if you will. The case in point, one thing that we didn't submit in that application then, but we will submit in our second application, is the HVAC work. Again, that was somewhat of a problem. Is it ongoing maintenance that didn't happen, or is it a new problem? So we held off, both Bob and myself, in terms of federal grants, seeking those funds for those expenditures are FEMA, but that's something now that hopefully we can use going forward. So 129,000, we're still waiting, and hopefully we'll get some answer within the next month after the town meeting.
Great, Dan. Pupil services, again, these are just our funds that we use to support our health offices, and again, that's a flat number. We have been able to tap into some of the grants to help support the PPE and so forth that is being utilized by our nurses, who are doing a fantastic job on a daily basis. I just met with the boards of health and our nurses today, and they're all in very good spirits. At this stage of the game, having all the kids in there. So it's basically a level funded position or item right now. Special ed tuition, this is a small increase of 2.4%, but I'll have Christine Smith speak to this.
Well, Daryl, before Chris jumps in, I apologize, Chris, as I cut you off the path. I'd like to just throw up one document that I did share with finance, if I could. I think will really explain this slide here. if that's okay, Daryl.
Um,
Okay, I'm going to talk to it. How's that? I'm going to.
yeah, why don't you talk to it, because it's going to be hard going back and forth. I don't
Okay,
want
got it. Okay, so the increase, the net to the general fund next year is 2.8 in tuitions, an increase of almost $67,000. But it's important to note, and I did discuss this with finance last week. This was in my presentation with finance. There were 2 slides which spoke about offsets. And the message that I'd like to leave with you, and Chris, I don't want to steal your thunder, but the estimated cost for tuitions in FY22 as of this moment in time is approximately $7.2 million. So how do we go from 7.2 to 2.8 with the use of offsets? And again, I did present this at finance last week. There are 2 pages that I put up there in my presentation. Number one, where we're looking to use federal grants, 240 grant money, approximately $1.4 million as an offset. And this is not something new. We use these funds every year, but how we represent it, I think is what's new. And what I'm trying to do is give you the bigger picture, in terms of the tuitions. Number 2, circuit breaker. Again, where we're looking to bring forward next year into FY22 a minimum of $1 million, and the requirements are that those dollars get used within a year following their disbursement. And then we're also looking to use next year's allocation of a circuit breaker. We're using offsets in the salary appropriation, and I apologize. I should have mentioned that when Darryl was speaking to that. Approximately $200,000 to reduce those costs. So as of now, as of this moment in time, we're using about $5 million in offsets. And the numbers are as follows. Estimated carry forward in circuit breaker, 1.2. Next year's circuit breaker, and this is a conservative figure, about $2 million. We're also looking next year to use, again, transportation stabilization. That's an offset in transportation. We'll get to that in a little bit. The 240 grant, again, we're using about 1.4 million. So when I talk about the offsets, I'm talking about the bigger picture, not only for SPED transportation, but also for SPED tuitions, but also transportation and salaries. So that's the key takeaway here, is that our total tuitions are not 2.8, they're actually 7.2. Backing down the offsets, you get to the 2.8. Thank you. Chris, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think those are really important details that we need to bring transparency to also. So, you know, we work really hard to build IEPs that always meet the individual needs of students. And through that same lens, we also look to write IEPs that are going to reach the circuit breaker dollars so that we're getting back as much as possible, especially for our in-district students. We did, I would say under my direction, see an increase in our in-district payments this past year. And if COVID had not hit during extraordinary relief, we would have captured extraordinary relief funds for the first time. So anyway, those are our details of special education. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan and Chris. So again, the total instructional and operations, so between instructional support, operations and maintenance, pupil services, and special ed tuitions, it's an increase of about $345,800 between FY21 and FY22 for an increase of about 3.5%. So fixed costs. And again, Dan, I'll let you talk a little bit about these other operating costs.
Sure thing. So this slide is a little bit confusing. I realized that when I was presenting to finance last week, and I sent them some information over the weekend. So hopefully I clarified that. Our approved budget for FY21 is almost 1.2, and these other operating costs, the school choice out and charter school assessments. Throughout the entire FY21 state budget process, the almost 1.2 held until the very end. And when the budget went to the compromise committee, there was a significant increase in the FY21 number. That final number for 21 was in essence 1.7 million and change. When you look at the year to year for the FY21 state budget with the FY22 state budget, there's an increase here of about $17,000. However, when you compare this, and we use the cherry sheet figures, when you compare this to our approved budget that the committee approved last March, there's a variance there of almost 556,555 and change. And this actually is a challenge that we will be about in 21 that we're going to need to address. This does reflect the number of students who have left the district also, in terms of attending other programs, other districts, or for that matter, charter schools. One question that was raised to me the other day from finance, and I need to get back to finance on, is that the variance, the variance is pretty significant in the state budget process for 21, how it went from almost 1.2 to 1.7. So I'm drilling down, and I will respond back to finance relative to that problem. I'll sit there.
Thank you, Dan. Transportation, something near and dear to Dan's heart. Do you want to speak to this as well?
Sure thing. So, and again, this is a little bit of a misnomer, this number here. And this goes back again to the offsets. As the committee knows, last June, they voted approximately $150,000 to be transferred into a transportation stabilization account, which needs to be used this year, and we will for home to school. In building the 22 budget, administration made an assumption, number one, that we would also do a transfer again into a transportation stabilization at some point during this year for next year. That figure is approximately $200,000, and again, we seek some guidance on that. And then the second adjustment is that we're looking to use $50,000 in circuit breaker funds, if that still holds, to offset sped transportation. So that's the reason for that reduction there. And again, this does help the towns in terms of the assessments, because we're able to reduce those costs. But again, for the second time, if I may, these offsets are fluid numbers, subject to change, and they will impact the net to the operating budget.
Great, thank you, Dan. Debt service, again, this is one that has, Dan was able to refinance our two high school bonds to a lower rate, faster payoff. So this is another savings, correct, Dan?
So this goes back to the work that we did last summer, as the committee knows, and so we're going to begin to see the savings moving forward. This is over the course of about 8 years that we refinanced this debt, and this is the direct result of the refinancing.
Excellent. So total fixed costs between other operating costs, transportation, and debt service, it's a difference of about $415,000, or percentage about 3.8%. So for total expenditures, we have salaries and benefits, basically almost a $4 million increase. Instruction and operations, about a $350,000 increase, and fixed costs, $415,000 increase. So between FY21 and FY22, right now, the projected difference is about 4.6%. This pie chart shows just how the breakdown happens amongst our different appropriations. So as you can see, our salaries and benefits takes up almost 80% of our entire budget. And our instruction and operations, less than 10%, and fixed costs are 10.5%. So really, that 9.7%, we talk about this quite often. Bob Imber will often, come back to this number, and he has over the years. And just talking about, hey, listen, we have less than 10% to really focus on direct instruction with the kids. Granted, most of the funds are going into support staff. Teachers, administration, custodial, clerical, paraprofessionals, ABAs, all the people who support our kids day in and day out. That's that 80%. But we still have, almost 10% of what we're trying to do in terms of textbooks, technology, all of those other items that are so vital to keeping our schools and our children learning. So this is a complete budget breakdown by appropriation. So these are all the appropriations broken down to the total general fund. So going from 102,115,384 to 106,827,130. And again, as Chair Weeks mentioned earlier, this is just what we have put together right now. We're in the process of collecting information, but this is where we're at in terms of some of our projections at the administrative level. And Dan, I'll have you talk a little bit about the FY22 revenues.
So Chapter 70, again, we saw an increase of almost $202,000, and the big bump there is that the DESE did tweak the formula, and for the district, what they did in tweaking the formula is that they put the low income back to the 2016 levels, if you will. By making that tweak, we saw an additional 51 students. So though we lost several hundred students, again, that we're not seeing that hit per se. As I had said earlier, there were adjustments between the 21 and 22 state funding. Our charter school reimbursement is down approximately $117,000. Regional transportation, again, the number on the state cherry sheet is 1.6 million. FY21, we were at 2.4 million, so it's almost $800,000. This is a number that will most likely remain constant throughout the state budget process. Secondly, and last, school choice. Again, it was level funded at $321,000, and our receipts actually will be less than that. As I explained to finance during the year, the DESE will make adjustments in the disbursements. So that when we look at our revenues, I typically underestimate the school choice figures because number one, our numbers are going down, and this does not reflect that. Medicaid, with COVID, obviously our claims are down, and this is something that I've been speaking with Director Smith about. We did make a significant reduction in the 21 budget. As most of the committee knows, for a number of years, the receipts were at a steady increase. And we all know that there was a reason for that, and the rest is history, as they say. So we made a significant adjustment in this year's budget from to $450,000. That's something that administration is going to need to look at. And do we keep it at 450 or do we reduce it given the level of activity? We won't know a definitive claim number for FY20 until probably the middle of March. So again, that's to be determined. Excess and deficiency. As a committee knows, and as I explained to finance last week, We had our E&D certified this past December, approximately 1.4 million. And the question becomes, number one, questions become, number one, do we use E&D as an offset in 22? And then if we do, what value do we associate with that offset? Historically, from what I've seen in the past, you've used approximately $150,000 in recent years as an offset. We didn't use anything in 20 and 21. So, and as the committee knows, the balance that we have in E&D is well under what DOR says that we should have in there. DOR says it should be 5% of your operating budget, so that's approximately 5.1 million. And we've got 1.4 million in there, 1.4 million in there now, and a sum of that keyword is could, be used to offset assessments in 22. But that needs to be voted prior to June 30 if that's going to happen.
And also under miscellaneous revenue, we do know you made some projections around that as well.
I apologize. Yep, miscellaneous. Again, that we made a correction with miscellaneous revenue in the 21 budget. For the past several years, there was my term, a placeholder of almost $440,000. It was $439 and change. District has not hit that benchmark at all in recent years, and so we made a correction for 21. We reduced it from $439 and change to 200,000 even. And even that is I think is going to be a bit of a challenge to hit this year. In miscellaneous, typically those are the chargebacks to districts across the Commonwealth. We bill them for transporting their student to the Devereux program out in Rutland. And again, our receipts are down this year, and I think we need to take that into account for 22.
Great, thank you, Dan. So the budget calendar, governor's budget came out in January. We will have our annual budget hearing as a school committee on March 1st. We begin meeting with town officials actually next week. So we meet with town officials, not next week, excuse me, the week after. So last week of February, first couple of weeks of March. School committee approves a budget on March 15th. And then we have our town meetings all held in May. From May 3rd to May 8th to May 11th to finally hold it on the 17th of May. And just, a couple of figures. We have 567 employees who live in the district. And as you can see, 255 are from Holden, 45 Paxton, 35 are from Princeton, 173 are from Rutland, and 59 are from Sterling. So we have almost half of our employees live within the 5 towns. So in this, again, this is where the retreat aspect of what we're trying to do tonight, it's a little strange because again, we're virtual, but we're really looking for input from you around several different items. And these are just ones that we've come up with. And again, as Chair Weeks mentioned, we're still looking for other kind of information from you, other input from you. So some of the different items that we had talked about was the use of transportation stabilization. As Dan mentioned, use of excess and deficiency. These are offsets. Carrying forward funds in circuit breaker and school choice. Any additional staffing that people have been thinking about. Athletics. And then, a goal for the percentage increase for the FY22 budget. Right now, it's at 4.6%. We have had communication from at least one town asking for pretty much a 3% increase. So again, what we're looking at is 4.6 right now. This is just us pulling these numbers together. I'm not sure if that's going up, down, depending upon where the school committee is in reference to kind of your thoughts around what our needs are as well. So we just wanted to give you that broad outline and then be able to come back to you and say, okay, what are the different items that you really want to focus on? So just like to say thank you for that. One of the things in Chair Weeks, I'm not sure how you want to do this, but we could leave this up and there could be a chat part, part where people could ask their questions, or you could do your go around with members that have questions.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I was thinking about this meeting, obviously, all week. I think it might behoove us to have members put their questions in the chat specifically, and then I can read them off, just because we're very limited on time. We have just over an hour, just over 40 minutes, I mean, to wrap up. So instead of members just really kind of speaking to their points, if you guys could briefly put your questions, comments, or priorities in the chat. I'll read them off and Dr. McCall can answer them. It'd be nice to keep the presentation up as well in case we need to refer back to an item. So members, if you would take a moment, put a question, comment, or priority in the chat. Obviously, I can call upon you to expand on your thought. If we can do that now, so we can utilize our time to our best advantage. Thank you, everybody.
Do you want me to play the Jeopardy music now, Megan?
No, I guess I can add my one comment / question. I was in contact with Representative Ferguson in the last few weeks, and they are working at the State House to fund some sort of mechanism to make up for the loss of students on the October 1 Sims. But that's yet to be determined. All right, I think we got some coming in. So Member Pantos is first in the chat tonight. His top priority is a 3% increase for FY22, and I think that matches a lot of what the towns have been asking. Dr. McCall, can you expand upon maybe what member towns have asked us to increase by?
Sure. So, you know, we did have our budget roundtable with the communities a few weeks ago, and I know that was something that was discussed, you know, at 3.5%. It was kind of thrown around. You know, I know members of the Holden Select Board, or I'm sorry, the Holden School Committee members did receive a letter from representatives from the town of Holden, just really asking for a 3% increase. And again, that's something that we've had in the past. Communities have said, hey, you know, we could really use a 2 or a 3 or a 4, but oftentimes they will put a number out there in the hopes that we try to meet that number. I can tell you that I have done my best to kind of present budgets that kind of kept us within a certain you know, increase over the past 6-7 years. It's not always easy, especially when we have times when we have health insurance increases that are as large as the ones that we're incurring right now. So I think some members remember we had, I think 2 years ago, 2 and 3 years ago, we had 0%. It was flat. We had no increases for health insurance for 2 years in a row. And that really allowed us to do some great things with staffing, to really increase our tech support and so forth. And, you know, now we're at a place where, you know, and Bob and I will talk about this quite often, you know, we've built up what we need to do, and now it's a matter of maintaining. Yes, there are still things that we need as a district, guaranteed. But again, in the current fiscal climate, I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that there are competing factors for funds right now. So I think that's a big part of this.
Thank you. And a few more came in as well. So from Member Gustafson, she's disappointed that they didn't receive the staffing plan before this meeting, and that becomes a bigger discussion, but she appreciates where you are in this presentation. So put a pin on that for a future meeting is that staffing plan that many of us have been looking to see.
Yeah, and I can tell you real quick, Chair Weeks, it's something that we are looking at. We do have a staffing plan that goes through 2027, I believe. It's a pretty extensive plan that we put out there last year. We've been working on for over 2 years. What we can do is come back to that, take a look at it, make the updates based upon what we've done thus far, and then move forward with it. Because again, ultimately, that's one of the things that we want to be able to address and deal with as, you know, you have an ebb and flow associated with a budget. So in a perfect world, we could just follow that model every single year without any deviation. But what we'll do is we're going to come back to it and update the committee on that as soon as we can.
Great. I might end up cutting you off, Dr. McCall. Quite a few came in the chat, and so I want to make sure we get to everybody's question. You're going to get a 2-minute timer. From member Woodland, does that FY22 salary line include all those additional positions that you listed? I'm seeing a head no from Director Furlow.
No, it doesn't. So that doesn't include every single new position. So when we were talking on that slide that had the FY22 positions that we had put in there, that does not include those positions that were part of that original staffing plan, because we had so much other information out there associated with those, with the current funds.
Thank you. Next from member Young, according to the FY21 budget book, charter school revenue was $52,822, but the FY22 is expected to be a $117,000 drop. How is that even possible? Is there some mix up in those numbers?
So I responded to his question in the chat, and our budget, approved budget, had 52,000 and change in there. In the final state budget for 21, we picked up the 161,000 and change. And again, it remains to be seen if we receive all that money. And then there is a hit in the 22 budget, at least as of now. And that is a fluid number that will likely change in the state budget process.
Great, thank you. Member Gustafson again supports the assistant business director and possibly suggests that somebody in that assistant superintendent role have strong data report and survey skills. This might be an area that helps us capture additional funds and answer many requests that the school committee has. For the staffing plan, member Ayala, could we use excess funds this year to add an administrative position, even if it's temporary with COVID relief funds?
So Melissa, do you mean a central office position? I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, central office, because of everything that's gone on and not having obviously enough staff to handle all of everything. Yeah. Is there anything there that we could add that position to help sort everything out?
And thank you for bringing that up. You know, one of the things we have to be cognizant of is as these funds come in, they're typically limited. So the ESSER funds in particular, some of these will roll out to FY23, so they can be spent out but we definitely want to look at how we can better support central office just in general. Again, Bob's going to be leaving in June. We're going to be replacing that position. And if there are other ways that we can help support central office moving forward, we're going to do so. But that's it. Thanks for asking.
Thank you. From member Gustafson, where are the school choice students going this year? This might be helpful in trying to project their likelihood of coming back. So are they homeschooling? Are they in private schools? Is it a mix?
Yeah, Brendan, can you chime in on that a little bit, please?
Sure, happy to. So we are completing the school attending children report, if I can say that. It's due in the next few weeks, submitted to the DESE. So I'll be able to provide you, I believe I did last year too, a breakdown of where kids are going by category and even by grade. I get pretty granular on that. So that will be coming soon once that report is complete.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Brendan.
A great question from member Pantos, just kind of on process. Have any funds been made available or reimbursements from the state or federal government specifically for the unexpected HVAC work we did this year? Any reimbursements available for that work?
So it would be, I'll jump in there, Darryl. It would be through FEMA, and it would be through the recent changes that are the end result of the new administration that we can put them in and receive some type of potential reimbursement.
Thank you. A concern from member Mills about the staffing slide. He's asked information about staffing changes this year due to tiered reductions. We need to have a curricular discussion about what we lost. So who did we lose, right? So for instance, he says at Mount View, they lost French and strings without any discussion from the school committee. but these are curricular changes that we should discuss, not just in chat comments. District administrations replace these lines with an integration specialist, counselors, etc., which, you know, are not things that are going to bring kids back into our district.
So I can tell you, we did bring the French position back. That's actually at Mount View. We did not bring a strings position back yet. But Chair Mills, sorry, Member Mills, in the presentation that I'll do in the school committee meeting, I do have those some of the figures that you had talked about that I'll be sharing as well.
Thank you. A strong point from Member Longbelial. We routinely need a 4% increase just to open our doors, to maintain services. This year, we're definitely going to need more. Her main concern is ensuring early literacy needs for those gaps, right, are met in special education services. Also, we really need the assistant business director and resource nurse. So again, keeping ourselves data minded as we add positions.
So if I could just jump in there for a second, there is a sum of money built into the salary budget, approximately $300,000 relative to compensatory special ed services. And that's a figure that I worked with Director Smith.
Great. Priority from Member Otmar. Can you speak to how offsets have been used over the years? For example, this year it's listed as 106 plus M, but it's really 111 plus M that we're spending with other offsets baked in. How does that track with FY21 and earlier?
So historically, the district has used offsets in a number of revolving accounts and federal grants, school choice primarily for insurances. We built the 21 budget on the premise that we would use school choice to offset our cumulative insurance cost. We haven't touched it because we're looking to bring that forward into 22. We've used historically a circuit breaker to offset our tuition costs. And typically in the past, you've not brought money forward. I think FY20 was the first year that you brought a sum of money into the following year for circuit breaker, which was a little bit over $1 million in 21. You've used the 240 grant, federal grant for tuitions as an offset. I think again the difference is that we're putting it out there where, I guess, a lack of a better word, being more transparent in terms of how we use these funds. You've used the ECC revolving as an offset to pay the salary for the director, usually at 100% with no hit to the general fund. Those are just a couple of examples.
Thank you. And I kind of want to put a few of these comments together. They're very similar, and I think they're very important, just in looking at the clock as well. So a number of members, Member Dennis and others, Member Mills, really looking at the budget accounting for the learning loss that students may have in the population during the remote learning, and in the remediations we're starting to brainstorm to help them. So what are these remediation strategies? Is it summer school or an extended day? And what kind of cost would that have in order to kind of plug those holes?
So we've actually started that conversation first via special education, but also via the building principals and looking at cohort D and ultimately what we're going to need moving forward. So, you know, we have instituted STAR Math. So we have the STAR Math assessment to really give us a really solid idea of where students are across the board that we didn't have up until this year. So we didn't have that consistent methodology to be able to assess where a student is at Davis Hill versus Naquag versus Thomas Prince. So this is really this has been a huge step forward for us. Now looking at this is how we need to, you know, move forward. And I think Member Dennis just wrote this in just SPED, and I'm not just talking about SPED because cohort D students are students that are in need. So what we're doing is we're looking at them. It could be a model that looks an awful lot like what the special education model looks like. We're also looking at what a remote model might look like, because again, what we have to do is look at what, you know, if we're talking about transporting students, that can be a heavy duty cost during the summer to bring kids back and forth to schools. You know, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars just for transportation, let alone some of the other things. So we're looking at a couple different options right now.
Thank you. From Member Smith, really interested in the staffing needs. Last year, we spoke at length about the need for a resource nurse and a director of VOC programs. Augmenting our vocational offerings and programs can help meet the needs of our students and also bring more funds and students into our district. So speaking in favor of the vocational director. Member Longbeliel and also Member Mills kind of piggybacked each other one after another. She meant to mention we need at least 2 more teachers at Mount View. Member Mills and others also asked for information about middle school athletics. So when we cut these things, we lose kids. We're not doing our job as a committee, not having a discussion about staffing before we vote on a budget. So we really got to look at that staffing. And to many members, what's the update on those Mount View teachers and middle school athletics?
So again, middle school athletics is cut everywhere. There are no middle school athletics in the state right now. So I think that's, again, that's everywhere. We have put it back into the budget. In my presentation that I'll do during the school committee around some of the data requests, I do have a slide in there on athletics and the costs associated with it, specifically for middle school, but that has been put back into the budget. The 2 middle school teachers at Mount View Middle School, what we're doing is we're looking at their numbers with Principal Githmark in terms of assessing, okay, where we're at, because ultimately we have to look to see how we could possibly, migrate to a different schedule, because again, as we've talked about in the past, the Mount View schedule is different because they have an extra period. Paxton and Mount View both have an extra period compared to the 2 K-8s in the other middle school.
All right. So again, Member Kirschenbaum also wanted to bring up those additional teachers, and she's asking if the VOC director and that VOC director would result in increased funding in the vocational courses.
It could. It's probably not going to be immediate, Laura. It'll probably be something that happens over time. But we worked directly with the state last summer on this. We had someone come out and meet with us at the high school and kind of go through our programs to see whether or not we would qualify. We would, but we have to take that leap of faith in terms of bringing the person on and then build the program. So it's really 2 funding sources. You have to have a funding source to ensure that you have enough funds to keep those programs running. Plus, you'll probably get some funds from the state after that as well. You just don't know what you're going to get. So we want to ensure that we're able to do it correctly the first time. But we're definitely looking at that.
Thank you. A great question from Member Dennis. So this is probably a Dan question. What is a calculated appropriation increase by town at this level? So at this percentage, how does each town go up?
So we spoke about this last week in finance, and I do have preliminary numbers. But one of the problems, as I spoke at finance last week, is the integration of the SO2 grant funds. And to make a very long story short, towns may have the option of using these funds to reduce their assessments. The cumulative value across the board is approximately $335,000, but these are federal funds, and it's become slightly complicated as to the mechanics for the disbursement of these funds. So to Mike's question, because in my preliminary numbers, I did not factor in this $335,000. There is a meeting this Wednesday with Desi to speak about how these dollars will be allocated and dispersed, and if indeed I'll be reducing the assessments by this associate value across the board. So I don't have a definitive number yet, but I hope to have it by the end of the week at the latest.
Thank you. From Member Gustafson, Malia, you might have to explain this one for me a little bit. It's, do you have an update on the towns being able to use the COVID funds?
That's related to what Dan just said.
I thought they were connected. I'm just being
It
sure.
was related, and I was just in the middle of typing a follow-up question. So based on what Dan just said, that clarifies that we don't know yet. But I would wonder if the $335,000 he just mentioned is coming out of the $600,000 we thought we were getting, or if it's a different pool of money.
Yes,
related.
it is. Yeah,
Okay.
yes, it is. So our initial just real quick, our initial allocation was almost 608,000, 607,701, and there's a formula that they've used, and across the board now, the way these numbers read is that Holden's, I'm going to just use round figures here, just given the time. Holden's disbursement would be 209,000, Paxton 45,000, Princeton no change. Their MLC went down actually. Rutland almost 78,000. Sterling, small amount of 2,600 for the total of the 335.
Does that help clarify, Malia?
Yeah, it basically means we're losing half of our Ezra money to the towns, which is really unfortunate because we
So-
already have spent most of it in reimbursable expenses from this year. So
And
thank you.
And to your point, Malia, to your point, that's the conundrum that we're trying to sort out with DESE this week.
Yep,
Do I
appreciate
take
it.
that 335 and reduce the assessments, or does that go into our pocket? Because it is a federal grant.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that clarification. I won't take more time talking about it today, but thank you for the update. And I'm sure other people are probably confused who aren't on business and finance, but you know, it's a continuing discussion, but losing about half our funds is the bottom line. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Member Haber with a very important point. She has difficulty looking at these numbers when she doesn't know where we're at this year. We spoke a lot in the beginning of the pandemic about funding and cuts and budget. But that final update, like who's been put back in, who has not been put back in, and where we are with our bottom line right now.
Sure, and you know what? I think that's something that between HR and the business department, we can have that pulled together pretty quickly and get out to everybody.
That would be appreciated. Thank you. From Member Smith, with some budget priorities, elementary guidance is a need we can't deny right now. Dr. McCall knows the history of cutting or gutting our student support positions from elementary schools many years ago. It's not okay to have our schools incomplete without counselors at all levels to support students, teachers, admin, and family. I'll just add in, especially after the pandemic.
And I can tell you, Chair Weeks, those 3 positions have been posted. So we're looking to hire those positions ASAP. So I know Brendan is going to be working with the building principals on that and trying to bring those people on board as soon as possible. And they are part of the FY22 budget already.
Thank you. From Member Woodland, are the instructional increases based on pre-COVID plans, or do any account for additional recovery work but that may require funding to address COVID-related deficiencies, tutoring, for instance?
So even the funds include both. So we're looking to make modifications to what we have, and then take other funds and allocate them towards supporting any types of support systems that we need to put in place. One of the things Bob talked about also was kind of like the online aspects of what we can do to help support kids, and that's another area that we're going to have to look at as well. So that's part of it.
Great. Kind of important back-to-back questions from our 2 newest members. I think sometimes having a historical perspective is important when you're new at this. So from Member Pantos, from comparison, what was our % increase in salaries and stipends from FY20 to FY21? Dan, do you have those numbers?
It was almost 5%.
Almost 5%. And then again, the insurance quandary question from Member Sullivan, which is always a fun one for us. Did you mention that there are competing insurance vendors, or is a 14% projected insurance increase left to Blue Cross Blue Shield? Meaning, are we at the mercy of them as far as our costs?
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
It can be. So basically what does happen is that we have a cost associated with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we have our PEC that actually controls the health insurance and which vendor we actually go with. So there will be a PEC meeting. They will look at the vendors. They will look at the different options. We might have some other firms come in at lower rates, but those lower rates might also mean higher co-pays and so forth. So, again, it's really up to the PEC to make that decision as to what happens with that health insurance. So we're not bound to Blue Cross Blue Shield at that amount, but we school committee administration does not have control of it.
Thank you. Kate also brought up the point about adding in those positions that had been cut. Again, Member Dennis had asked about learning loss. Member Mills going back about that ESSER fund used by the towns as we can reduce that MLC. I think that's an important point for many members tonight.
Just want to jump in real quick. We're not required to do that, by the way. We're not required, but most likely, we will be asked to do that. And again, that's just part of the way it was set up.
Thank you. For Member Otmar, he thinks it'd be helpful for us as a committee to hear the different options for allocating resources that we can work in to have a priority list, right? So lower class sizes, right, is like column, elementary SEL support, nurse support, others. So what are our different options and what would it cost to do one of those options, two of those options, all those options? So to have some very clear numbers in that regard.
And Carl, I think it's a good point, Member Otmar. I mean, when we're looking at this, one of the things we've done in the past is typically it's a little different. We do it, the opposite way where we say, okay, A is this much of a reduction, B is this much of a reduction, C is this much of a reduction. But if we're looking at adding, remember, we're starting off at almost 4.6%, pretty much right where we're at. So additions are going to have to be added to that 4.6. Or, again, we can look at other positions that we currently have in terms of making modifications. But again, what we want to do is be able to say, okay, if there are different areas. So, again, what is also helpful for us is, Carl, if there are specific items you're saying, hey, you know what, Daryl, what about these things? Send them my way so that we can then pull that together as well. That's really helpful for us.
Great. I've got a bunch more. We have about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure I get to as many comments. Actually, I want to get to all the comments. Member Woodland, what was the thinking then on making sure current students who have stayed with this district are appropriately served in concert while attracting back students? So building back programs versus serving those who are still here.
It's really one of the reasons why we kept the budget moving forward. We didn't say, oh, you know what, let's bring it down by X number of dollars because we lost 400 students. We're not anticipating more. We're anticipating that we're going to be getting these students back while also providing support to the students who are here. So we're going to have to revamp how we look at just education from, pre-K all the way through 12, especially over the next couple of years until we get back into, I think, the swing of a traditional educational system. That's not just here. That's every single school in the entire country, unfortunately. But yeah, I think that's something that we look at. How slow, how do we pace the curriculum? What are the different areas that we really focus on in the curriculum as we move forward? It's breadth versus depth. All of those different items are going to come into play as we kind of look at what we're doing.
Thank you. Again, Member Panto's reiterating his point about keeping the raise very short, small. He says anything over 3.5% increase is a slap in the face to district residents who had to wait to January 2021 for students to have in-person learning. Let's go to Member Gustafson again. In FY21, we've seen a large amount remaining in instructional services. Can you address whether this will be used this year or if it's included in assumed carryover to FY22? Just quickly.
So one of the numbers in there, Daryl, excuse me, and I've spoken about this at finance as well, is excuse me, is the textbook line, and it is Bob's intent to expend those dollars. Bob has been very cautious as to how to use those dollars, and I think he spoke about that earlier in tonight's presentation relative to some of the challenges with COVID. The other number that's in there, it's a large number, and again, I've talked about this in finance, are our SPED contracted services, and again, I think it speaks to the work that Christine Smith has done relative to addressing some of the student needs. If there is a balance there, I will probably come forward to finance at a future meeting and look if there is not a need to look to see if a balance can be transferred someplace else, because again, there's going to be a gap. There is a gap that I've spoken to in other operating costs. Bob, did I miss anything?
Sounds good. Thank you, guys. All right. So, Member Dennis, budget priorities, important. Build into the budget an assessment and remediation program to address the loss of learning, particularly in early literacy. It's not acceptable to him to address this in a meaningful way because it would be expensive. Priority 2, to get as many students back into school full-time, particularly K through 2, to start the school year next year. All right, we've covered the ESSER funds. Member Brown, I see we have a budget meeting 1 hour and a school committee meeting on March 1st. What's the agenda of the school committee meeting? I think we need more than an hour to discuss budget. I would agree, Member Brown, and I'll look to extending that portion of the meeting. Thank you. Member Kirschenbaum, we need to make the argument and vision crystal clear how we are going to be asking for increased budget and increased staff when our trend of student population is going down. So we need to be very clear in our discussions with the towns. Member Young, what is the starting point for the Chapter 71 transportation decrease of approximately $789K?
It's based upon an estimated payment for FY21.
And then finally, for now, Member Dennis, what is the likelihood of school choice and charter out coming at 1.7 million when we've seen an increase of students leaving the district? So do you think that is appropriate?
So as I had spoken to one finance committee member via email, is that he raised a concern too about the rather large variance between the final state budget number and the state budget number for 21. Again, going from 1.1 to the 1.7. Need to drill down on that figure to see, what is the genesis to those numbers. Again, when you look at the final 21 state numbers and the initial 22 state numbers, there's a nominal increase of 17,000 and change. That's not the issue. The issue really arises with the final numbers in 21, which we're trying to sort out.
Thank you. And then again, from Member Dennis, he says that Dan had some preliminary numbers that did not factor ESSER for the town appropriations. Do you have those to share?
So I mentioned earlier across the board was 335,000, and I very quickly, I can read them again if you like. Holden's numbers, I'll read the exact numbers. Holden is 209,657. Paxton is 45,577. There's nothing for Princeton as of now. Rutland is 77,482. Sterling is 25,61 for a total across 4 of the 5 towns of 335,277. Now the question becomes, again, how do we factor these federal grant dollars into the equation for the assessments? Do these dollars reduce the assessments as apparently there is an intent or not? And hopefully we'll get some clarity. I will from my professional group, MASBO. That's not what Mike is asking.
No, Mike's asking for the percentages increased by towns.
Okay, I don't have those definitive numbers yet.
I'm sorry. Can I clarify my question?
Yeah,
Thank
please,
you.
Please.
Thank you. So I thought, Dan, you had mentioned that you had preliminary increases by town, not factoring in any sort of reduction based on ESSER. And if that's true, could you share that with us? I'm not looking for the impact of the ESSER reduction, just
Right.
that given the 4 million plus increase, what do we anticipate would be the appropriation increase by town?
So I do have preliminary numbers, Mike, but what's not factored into those numbers is the debt, and I'll have that tomorrow, and I'm happy to get it out to you, to finance, and to the full committee in the next couple of days.
Thank you. We have about 4 minutes left. Let's see. Member Young, do you want to clarify your question? I don't think your question was answered.
Yeah. So just, you said that the transportation was based on an anticipated FY21, and that the decrease is about 789K. What is that starting point? What's that dollar value we expect for FY21?
So the FY21 figure, again, is driven by what I report on the end of the year report. And Again, we have not received our first disbursement yet for FY21, but I'm going to be amending my numbers in 21 to reflect the proposed numbers for 22. So that's the 1.6 based upon the FY20 EOR, end of the year report.
Okay.
Does that help, Adam?
Yep.
I guess I'll let Ken have the last word. Does any member who hasn't put anything in the chat yet tonight want to mention a priority or something that's important to them? I keep going back to the same. I love that you guys are so enthusiastic, but I want to make sure everybody has a voice if they want one. Any other priorities? All right, seeing none. Member Gustafson, was a discrepancy in school choice charter largely due to students leaving due to COVID? Although you may have to give a little more context for that one.
I did. It got interrupted. I said that wasn't anticipated by our FY21 budget when it was passed. So I wondered if that accounted for the huge difference. I assume it might logically, but I didn't know. That's what I also was hoping the numbers Brendan mentioned might include specifically what schools they're going to. I know that's reported to the state, not just the categories, but what schools, so we have some sense of where they're going and maybe can extrapolate from that.
Yeah, I think you're right on target with that, Malia. It goes back to, finding out where those students are, where they're going. He'll have that information because we have to send it into the state by the end of the month anyway. So we'll have that. Once we have that, we'll put it into a report and we'll share that out with everybody as well.
Thank you.
I'm going to give Member Mills the last word here. You mentioned that the transportation numbers won't likely change. Have our local legislatures said that? He hopes that we could fight for higher reimbursement than the governor's number based on rate, not our individual circumstances.
So it's been my experience that through the state budget process that typically the number that's in regional transportation for the most part holds. I don't think that we're going to see the opposite. We're going to go from 1.6 to 2.4 at the end of the 22 budget process. That would be great. Don't get me wrong, but I don't see that shift. Again, I think what may be driving 22 is what happens here in 21, which we'll get into in a little bit at our next meeting.
Thank you, and thank you all. I guess I'll give Adam the last call before I go to a motion to adjourn. He states he's concerned we have an increase of 4.61, but a decrease in non-town revenue. If we want to increase that past 3 to 3.5%, we need to lean heavily on other revenue to bring the impact down to towns. Well said. I'll now take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and we're going to do a roll call. Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Don't see Krista. Member Brown?
Brown, yes.
Bennett, yes.
Oh, you are here, sorry. Member Dennis?
Dennis, no.
Member Gustafson?
Yes.
Member Heber?
Heber, yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Matt's not with us. Member Longbelial?
Longbelial, yes.
Member Mills?
Mills, no.
Member Mitchell, I don't think is here. Member Otmar?
Otmar, yes.
Member Pantos?
Yes.
Member Shapiro's not here tonight. Member Silva, I don't see either. Member Smith?
Smith, yes.
Member Sullivan?
Sullivan, yes.
Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Young?
Young, yes.
Chair votes yes. Take a minute to stretch and I'll see you on the other link, everyone. Thank you.